I do see a win-win when you're building your personal brand, when you start creating content regularly. The most effective way to do that is to be authentic. And that word is getting thrown around a lot at the moment. But if you can be yourself, that is going to give people an insight into what it's like to work at your company.
Welcome to the Agents of Change, the podcast experience you've been waiting for your entire marketing career. Search, social, mobile, AI, blockchain, and neuromarketing. These are the Agents of Change, and so are you. Digital marketing success awaits, and your transformation begins now.
Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Change podcast, the podcast that helps you reach and engage more of your ideal customers online, which is absolutely what we're going to be talking about today. My name's Rich Brooks. I'm your host. This is episode 586, powered by Flight New Media. Because you don't have to be a digital marketing expert to grow your business. You just need the right team in your corner. That's where Flight comes in. We've been guiding small businesses through SEO, paid ads, and web strategy since 1997. Start the conversation by visiting takeflight.com or theagentsofchange.com. Fill out the contact form and I'll be the one following up with you. So, a little bit of a background. I have a quarter share at Sugarloaf Mountain. Basically, 1 week a month, I get to move into a suite at the Sugarloaf Resort Hotel. And during the winter months, I make the most I can out of this arrangement. My girlfriend and I split our time between work and getting runs in during lunch breaks and other slow times during the day. And because it's midweek skiing, and because I like being out on the mountain more than my girlfriend, I'm often alone and there are no lift lines whatsoever. Seriously, I'm on my snowboard and I go right down to the gate and then I jump on one of the chairlifts. I also try and time it so I'm by myself on the chairlift so I don't have to make small talk. I know you would think somebody like me, I love chatting people up, but you know what? I also like my quiet time. Regardless, occasionally the line is just long, or it just works out that somebody gets on the lift with me. So what happens when this occurs? Well, I always end up chatting with the person next to me. What do we talk about? I ask them questions. What have you skied today? What's good out there? Where are you up from? And so on. My guest today would call these present commonality, or a way of finding a connection with somebody based on the little that you know or have in common with them. It seems obvious, but it shows how you can make meaningful connections in life and on LinkedIn. Side note, somewhere I read a whole piece of research about how most people avoid having these types of conversations, especially when they're commuting. So what the research team did is they basically set up these confidants, people who would be part of the survey but would sit down next to random people on the way in from work and start a conversation with them, even if it seemed, or especially if it seemed like the person wasn't interested in a conversation. What invariably happened, even the people who said they would rather not have to make small talk with strangers, is they all had an amazing time engaging with these strangers and having these human connections. Just something to keep in the back of your mind when you listen to today's conversation, and specifically the section on present commonality. People really do want human-to-human connections, regardless of the platform, regardless if it's in real life or on LinkedIn or any other platform out there. Now, the present commonality is just part of the story. However, so let's not waste any more time and dive right into the action. From earning $500 for his first batch of LinkedIn posts to building a six-figure business in under 2 years, my next guest has mastered the art of creating content that resonates. As a LinkedIn ghostwriter, he's helped solopreneurs, founders, and CEOs generate over 2 million impressions and establish powerful personal brands. Now he's paying it forward by coaching other solopreneurs to build a business they love. Today, we're going to be talking about the type of content that generates interest, traffic, and leads with Joe McKay. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rich. Great to be here.
Well, LinkedIn is my favorite social media platform, so I'm excited to jump into the conversation today. I know I love it, but what led you to focus on LinkedIn as a primary business development channel, especially for solopreneurs and small business owners?
So I think the time that I started really focusing more seriously on LinkedIn and spending a lot more time on LinkedIn in 2022, it kind of dawned on me that it was the only social media platform that I hadn't completely fallen out of love with, whether that be Facebook, Instagram. I never really got into Twitter or X, but I think in the early stages, particularly kind of kidded myself that it was productive to be scrolling LinkedIn. So I found myself just naturally hanging out there. I really started getting into LinkedIn when I had 6 months off for the birth of our second child, our son, and found my head, even though I didn't have work or a paid job, I sort of found my head just bubbling with a lot of ideas and thoughts. And as a way to kind of cleanse those and get them out of my system and into the world, I found myself just starting to share them. And LinkedIn was just the most logical fit for those ideas and those thoughts to go out. And so that's when I really started to stumble into LinkedIn as a platform to contribute content beyond I'm delighted to announce that I've just started this new job as CEO of the world or those kind of things.
Sure.
And that was, that's kind of the beginning of the journey. And I guess here we are about 3 years later, where it's the backbone of my business.
Okay. So when you're working with your clients, I know that there's a number of types of LinkedIn posts that you feel businesses should be creating to create a comprehensive content strategy. Can you explain what those three are?
Yeah, for sure. So look, the 3 posts that I think every business that's serious about LinkedIn should be creating, really the first bucket is awareness. So the goal there is reach as many eyeballs as you possibly can. The second bucket is around trust building or expertise building content. And this is really where you start to get more focused on the audience that you want to talk to, the ideal customer that you're trying to serve, and you're trying to build credibility and demonstrate your expertise to that audience. And the final category of posts, and this is where I see a lot of gaps when I audit B2B content strategies, is around making offers in content. So making an invitation for someone to work with you with a strong, clear call to action of what they can do next if they're interested. I see a lot of awareness generating content. I see more and more memes. I see more and more videos. I see some trust building stuff, but I would love to see more at that kind of bottom of the funnel, I guess, to use that old language, where you make an invitation and make it a very clear decision for someone to make if they're interested in working with you.
All right. So let's go through the first two fairly quickly, and then we'll spend some more time with the making offers. So awareness, you mentioned memes, and sometimes I feel like I love memes. Sometimes they're exactly how I want to express myself, but I often fear that we're heading into Facebook territory. So when you're working with professionals, owners, solopreneurs, what are some of the awareness type posts that you recommend?
Yeah. So these are typically going to be story or narrative led posts. So they might be a brief overview of how you got to where you are today, or the hardest lessons that you've learned as a beginner. One technique that's really powerful to kind of brainstorm around this is, writing a letter to yourself 2 years ago and where you were then and the things that you wish you knew. So awareness on LinkedIn is, less about memes, I would say, and more about bringing some of your personal stories, experiences, recollections, and kind of maybe milestones along the journey. But they're typically going to be more story-led content that has a broad appeal beyond who you're kind of specifically trying to talk to in terms of an ideal customer. That makes sense.
And do you recommend any sort of hooks or anything specific? Because obviously anybody can share their history, but that doesn't mean it's going to be seen. So are there anything that you recommend that we include in these awareness posts just to get a few more eyeballs on them?
Yeah, so you make a good point around hooks. So the hook being the first kind of 2 to 3 lines that appears above the fold or before the see more button in a LinkedIn post. This is really important real estate. Every character counts in the hook. And so things that work really well in terms of hooks on LinkedIn are specific numbers or figures. They can be big numbers, but even just very specific numbers tend to draw the eye. If you can open a loop, so if you can kind of pose an open question that triggers that need that we all have to kind of see how the story ends or see what comes next, is a great way to easily grab, or not easily, but is a great way to hook attention. So numbers, open loops, if you can kind of challenge conventional wisdom, or if you can throw something out that just feels like a juxtaposition or something that doesn't, 2 pieces of a hook don't sit well together, that can also just trigger our need to figure out what is going on here. That kind of pattern interrupt. That would be 3 strategies that you can use to maximize the hook. That's going to get more people to click see more. And that is a great signal to the algorithm that this post is interesting and relevant and valuable. So that will then spread your content further and wider.
All right. The next one you said is expertise or trust building. And how do we shift naturally into doing those kind of posts? Are there specific things that you recommend that we include in that second tier of posts?
Yeah. So when we talk about building trust and demonstrating our expertise, this is naturally going to lend us to narrow our focus more towards our ideal clients and the audience that we actually want to serve and who we want to work with. My philosophy when it comes to creating content, and especially when it comes to creating trust building content, is that the best content, the most effective content is not created from scratch. It's actually found. So a great place to go looking for trust building content is in your existing interactions with customers. So if you hop on a discovery call and a prospect asks you ABC question about your field of expertise, that could become the bones of a LinkedIn post. If you're in sales conversations or delivery calls, things that keep coming up time and again for prospects or for clients, the value-adding parts of your process, if you can give snippets or insights into what it's like actually working with you. I take the mindset of trying to harvest content rather than stare at a blank page and kind of ideate and create things from scratch. I much want to look around inside the four walls of my business and see what I can grab and repurpose and kind of put back out into the open market to create content.
All right. And now the third one is making offers. And, I'm sure it's a kind of a fine line here where maybe you don't want to go overboard. It doesn't sound like you're recommending you go overboard, but you're still making it obvious that there's something to buy or engage or some sort of step to take. So how do we position those so we don't come off like we're all about sales or that we're being really pushy?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two factors to consider here. I think the first factor to consider when it comes to making offers in content is frequency and kind of the ratio, I guess. So just to recap on the three buckets and kind of my golden ratio, I guess, would be 30% awareness, 60% trust building, and roughly 10% making offers. So the first step is not to do this all the time. If all you do is post offers, you will just come across as sleazy and pushy. If all you do is create awareness, generating content, you just become a LinkedIn influencer, which works for some people, but is probably not, for your audience, the people listening, is probably not the strategy. So the first factor to consider is do this sparingly, 10 to 15% of the time. The second factor to consider is the offer doesn't have to be a big call to action. It doesn't have to be an offer to, buy my high ticket package. It might be subscribe to my newsletter. It might be send me a DM to have a conversation or for a free audit or something like that. So you could have a lead magnet, you could have your newsletter, you could have a free service that you offer. So you can make offers at different scales as well as kind of drip feeding them in amongst the other pillars of your content to make sure that you're not coming across as too pushy. I think the best packaging for an offer is client results. So if you have, it could even be as simple as a screenshot of a great message from a satisfied client. It could be a breakdown of how you help them achieve a result, good feedback on social media, things like that are great kind of packaging for an offer. And you can have a really strong call to action after you've kind of demonstrated that success for your clients.
All right. Now, I know you work a lot with solopreneurs, but I do know that you mentioned also CEOs and some other people. Is there any shift in recommendation if instead of we're looking for sales, we're looking for employees? Like, do you ever have clients who are like, I need my LinkedIn profile to be attracting people who want to work with me? And if so, does there have any shift in those three types of posts that you mentioned?
It's a really good question. So it's not typically a focus of the work that I do and the people that I've worked with. Typically, the primary focus is leads, revenue, that kind of thing. I do see a win-win when you're building your personal brand, when you start creating content regularly. The most effective way to do that is to be authentic, and that word is getting thrown around a lot at the moment. But if you can be yourself, that is going to give people an insight into what it's like to work at your company. And so I think largely the categories of content as a framework still apply. And the bigger picture idea of being authentic, trying to be genuine, obviously not fabricating things, not sugarcoating things, I think is a great way to give people a peek inside the culture that you're building at your company. If talent attraction is a particular focus, then you might spend part of your kind of awareness generating content really focusing on heroing some of the employees that are in your business already. I think really great personal brands, they don't put themselves in the spotlight. They are the spotlight, and they shine that spotlight on the people around them. So whether that's customers in a lead gen sense, or if it's other employees or talent in a talent attraction sense, I think using your personal brand as a spotlight and shining it on the people that you want to hero is what's going to attract like-minded people to you.
All right. Now, social media algorithms are constantly changing, and some people are constantly chasing those algorithms, trying to make sure. Are there things that we should be thinking about now in 2025 that are popular on LinkedIn that you're recommending to your clients? Or should we be thinking about trying to create content that is algorithm proof as we're generating these new things?
Yeah, so I think there are kind of two parts to this. My first thought is it's really important to lean into your strengths and create the types of content that best reflect you and the brand that you want to build. And even if you're creating your own content, the types of content that you feel most effective and comfortable creating. So if you're a whiz with the written word, then I would lean into that. If you're good on camera, then you might want to experiment with video. So my first piece of advice would be stick with what kind of comes naturally to you and play to your strengths. Having said that, there's no point trying to fight against the machine. Like the algorithm has certain things that it prefers and things that it's like. And so we do need to be aware of those. In terms of trends and things that are coming or that are already here in 2025, video on LinkedIn has landed in a big way. So there's the TikTok style video feed. That means that, portrait oriented vertical video is way more likely to get picked up than horizontal widescreen video. So if you're creating video content, first thing would be make sure it's portrait orientation. I do help clients increasingly with getting on camera and creating video content because things are moving in that direction. There's still a lot of room for written content on LinkedIn. So video is definitely one. The other interesting trend that I'm picking up on is as AI clearly plays more of a role in the content that you see in the feed, this is bringing a return to what I call normcore content. This is like your Crocs and socks style content. Like it's just a little bit unpolished. It's a little bit, you can tell it's raw. It's very human. It's just normcore. It's not like super tightly formatted with really short, punchy sentences and one-line paragraphs and all that kind of stuff. I think there's still a lot of that out there, but it's so easily replicated. What I'm seeing now is stuff that is intentionally unpolished and raw and very human to kind of signal that, hey, I'm doing this myself. And I see naturally just a leaning towards people really enjoying that content more as the AI slop is so insidious at the moment. So normcore and vertical video are my trends to watch in 2025.
All right. And so we've talked so far about us creating our own content, but a big piece of social media is obviously the social aspect of it. What do you recommend for engaging with other people's content on LinkedIn in a way that maybe builds relationship rather than just promotes our own content?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is a fantastic way to get started with, I guess, business development, relationship development on LinkedIn if you're not at the point of wanting to or being able to create your own content regularly. The first thing is comments. So if you allocate 15, 20 minutes and you scroll the feed and you have a goal to leave thoughtful comments on a small handful of posts, that is a great way to get your headline, your photo, your brand in front of a new audience. When it comes to commenting, a great place to start is the genuine, specific compliment. Like take the time, read the post, and rather than just saying thanks for sharing or great post, pick out one specific thing, make the original post of the day, contribute to the conversation if you want to, but a really specific compliment is a great place to start. Gets you some reps in kind of putting yourself out there on LinkedIn. And from there, it's building on the original poster's idea. It might be constructively, of course, sharing your own perspective or your own opinion if it differs from the post. But commenting on other people's content is a great way to diversify against, the algorithm in terms of just creating your own content all the time. The other really valuable asset that LinkedIn has is obviously the one-to-one messaging capabilities that you've got. Everything it's very clear, it's very visible who you're talking to. The whole professional element to LinkedIn means that it's easy for you to find the right types of people And so reaching out one-to-one, if it's done in the right way, is also a really, really effective way to use LinkedIn. And fundamentally, that's kind of how LinkedIn all started, was about your professional network and connecting with relevant people in your audience. So I'm seeing a big return to the one-to-one message as well.
When you're talking one-to-one, are you talking about like LinkedIn Messenger?
Yeah, direct messages on LinkedIn, yep, to your connections, yep.
Perfect, because that's where I wanted to go next. Because you can have that sales, the offer type post,
Yep.
but it's sometimes for many people an awkward segue to slide into their DMs, as people like to say. So, what are some techniques that you use with your clients on going from that public arena to a
Yep.
one-on-one conversation? And then how do you get them out of LinkedIn Messenger and then maybe on the phone in a Zoom call or meeting face to face?
Yeah, look, I love talking about this because, to be very blunt, there are so many people doing this so badly that the bar is so low to do this well. The pitch slap feels like it's rampant on LinkedIn, and I think it's probably the worst thing that can happen on LinkedIn. And so we definitely don't want to do that. But I think this phenomenon of all these operators that are getting it wrong is leaving everyone very fearful about trying their own way. And so a lot of people on LinkedIn are just lurking. They're scrolling through the feed and there'll be no kind of visible sign of their interest. And so that means the opportunity is huge. When it comes to, initiating a one-to-one conversation on LinkedIn, a guy called Richard Moore explains this concept of present commonality. And it's the approach that I use in all my LinkedIn outreach, all my one-to-one outreach, actually, on any platform. And so I guess the best way to explain present commonality is actually, if I ask you a question, Rich, I'll give you a scenario and see what you would say in this situation. So let's imagine you're going to a wedding. You're going to this wedding by yourself and you've arrived at the venue a few minutes early, and you look around the seats and you realize that you don't know anyone else that's going to be at this wedding other than the couple. And so you're going to go and sit down next to someone that you don't already know. And you sit down next to them and you're sort of waiting to fill in a bit of time. What is a question that you might lean over and ask that person sitting next to you at the wedding?
First question would be, is bride or groom? What's that family are and what's your connection?
Exactly. Yeah. And so most people will say that. That's a very logical, light lift, like super natural question to ask. And that is present commonality. The thing that you guys have in common at that present moment is the bride and the groom, the couple that you're both there. So we want to reference present commonality to kind of break down barriers and start conversations in an effective way. So what that looks like on LinkedIn is, let's say someone's viewed your profile. Let's say someone's liked your content or they've commented on your content. That's the thing you've got in common. So your outreach message to that person might be, hey, Rich, thanks for checking out my profile. Once we've addressed the present commonality, we just want to hand over the microphone and give you the opportunity to say something. So to do that, I would say, did anything stand out? That's the outreach message formula that I use across new followers, new connections, people who engage with my content. That's referencing present commonality and then just simply handing the microphone over. No push, nothing too cringy about it, just giving them an opportunity and space to share if they want to.
So are you saying, because I get these alerts, like these 27 whatever people looked at your profile, so you're following up with them and saying, like, not exactly the same way, but you're saying, hey, I noticed you were stalking me, and just thought I'd ask, like, is there something, was there something interesting in my profile that you found or something like that? And I would probably phrase it differently than that, but then again, knowing me, I might phrase it exactly like that just to get a reaction out of them. But that's one approach that you might take.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think profile viewers, and I do invest in LinkedIn Premium. It's not cheap, but I do invest in LinkedIn Premium because I think that allows you to then see everyone who's viewed your profile. And I see that as a really high intent signal that we want to use on LinkedIn. And so profile viewers is a great place to go looking, especially if you're thinking about talent attraction, but for leads and clients as well. Reaching out to people who've checked out your profile is a great source of leads. And so that message that you shared there, like, use a bit of humor, break the ice. I think that's a great way to approach it.
Very interesting, because I haven't done that. I have Sales Navigator, so it's definitely something I could take advantage of, and I will definitely be trialing that out. And when you were telling that story about the wedding, or that example about the wedding, it reminds me, because I am actually, people think I'm this master networker, and honestly, I'm not. Like you, when I put on my own events and I know more than 50 people in the room, very comfortable. But when I go to a new event and I know one or nobody there, it is really challenging for me. I have a ski house, and when I go up there, we go midweek. There's almost nobody there. So most of the time I get to ride the chairlift by myself if I'm skiing by myself. But then there's always that time when you're with somebody else. You and that person, 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on the length, and you have to make small talk. And I always start the same way. I always start with like, hey, any good runs today? Or, where are you up from? Because these are, as you said, the present commonalities between them. In the wedding example and in the chairlift example, the only difference is there's a set period of time where we've been forced into this situation, this maybe unnatural situation, where with LinkedIn, there's always at the end of this, one of us wants something from the other, or maybe both of us want to work together. Is there anything that we can say or do that might be different than the chairlift or the wedding example? And maybe we'll recognize that, look, we're on this platform because we want to build our businesses, but still doesn't come across as smarmy or sleazy or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a business tool, a business networking tool. And so there's typically an outcome or an agenda that is behind interactions on LinkedIn. I think being open with that, realistic about that. I always try and use kind of permission-based messaging. So would it make sense to hop on a call? Things like that, rather than trying to push too hard or be too direct. But yeah, look, I think as well, we can potentially get caught up a little bit too much in overthinking this stuff. And like the people that are there who are interested, who are shopping or considering engaging people on LinkedIn, like this is how the game is played. And if they're not, they won't respond. They'll just probably move on with their day. And so I think it's important to be mindful of it. But at the end of the day as well, you got to get comfortable with the potential for rejection or things like that too.
Absolutely. If somebody's listening right now and they want to improve their results on LinkedIn, what would be the first thing you would recommend they tackle? Or alternatively, if they only have 5 or 10 minutes a day to give to LinkedIn, how should they spend it?
So if you've got 5 to 10 minutes a day to spend on LinkedIn, I would be doing a mixture of some thoughtful commenting on relevant, whether they're like influential people in your field or people who fit your kind of target audience. I'd be trying to leave a handful of thoughtful comments on people that fit that in your feed. And I would also be trying to send some, like grow your audience, essentially build your list of connections. So sending a few connection requests, maybe again on those posts that you're commenting on, finding interesting people in your orbit there and making some outreach to those people without any particular agenda or message initially, but just to grow your audience. I think the number one thing from a hygiene point of view is just read back over your profile with this mindset shift when it comes to the about section, particularly. So when LinkedIn started out, it was your CV online. And so the about section was about the profile owner, like it was about me. I actually think now the way that a LinkedIn profile should be set up is really not about the person whose profile it is, but about who you're trying to talk to. And so I would also encourage you to revisit your LinkedIn profile with that lens in mind, rather than sort of promoting how impressive you are and maybe all your achievements and things like that and your own story, flipping that more to be towards the audience that you're trying to serve or who you're trying to attract.
Okay. Now I understand you have a gift for our listeners, the Solopreneurs LinkedIn Playbook. How can people get a copy of that?
Yeah. So you can head to joemckay.info. That's JOEMCKAY.info. You grab my weekly newsletter there, the Solo Success School, and you'll get a copy of my end-to-end LinkedIn playbook. I've spent way too much time on LinkedIn over the last few years, so I've dropped everything I know about LinkedIn into that playbook, and you get a copy of that when you join my newsletter.
Excellent. And if people just want to connect with you, where can we send them?
Yeah. Take one guess on which platform I'm hanging out on. You can find me, Joe McKay, on LinkedIn. Otherwise, through joemckay.info, you'll be taken to my kind of landing page and you can find all my contact info there.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much. I will see you on LinkedIn, I'm sure, in the near future, and I appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me, Rich. Good to talk.
Great stuff from Joe. And if you missed any of it or you just want a refresher course, just head on over to our website at theagentsofchange.com. You'll find the audio recording, you'll find the transcription, you'll find show notes, links, everything you need to really take your LinkedIn marketing to the next level. If you want to change the trajectory of your business, you need to realize that it happens in conversations, not in broadcasts. So use Joe's present commonality approach to build authentic relationships that can lead to more trust and more business for your company. That's how you become the agent of change your business needs.
Don't miss another thrilling episode of the Agents of Change podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform.